Today I am taking a step into the unknown as I paint this little rabbit on hot press watercolor paper. I had a few problems with just some basic things like washes and texture. I learned a few things along the way, and hopefully you might find them useful too if you want to try this paper yourself. So here is the paper. It's 50% cotton and it's a hot press. I got a little A5 pad because I'm just painting a little Christmas card. First thing that I noticed, it doesn't really sink into the paper. The paint doesn't sink into the paper in the same way that a cold press would do. So normally I would paint onto the paper and it would soak in. Even on a non-cotton paper, on cold press, it will soak in. But with hot press, it didn't seem to do that. It seems to sit on the surface of the paper. It's almost like painting on cartridge paper. I don't know if you've ever tried that. So I struggled. I laid down a yellow colour. It's actually called transparent oxide yellow. And then some burnt umber for some darker shades. And normally I would expect it to blend together. I would expect the dark colour to blend into the underpainting, the lighter colour. But as you can see there on that left ear, it's just sat there. It's not. It's just not blending in at all. I found this really strange. So I started to add some extra water, but not too much because I didn't want it to cauliflower. And in the end, I ended up wiping it with a damp brush. Yeah, it was difficult. I'm even dabbing off some of the colour there with a tissue because it's just not soaking in the way I would expect it to. So with a combination of applying extra water and dabbing off with tissue, I think I started to get the textures okay. You can see there's quite a hard line there on that left. Yeah, anyway, let's jump ahead. What this paper is perfect for, and I'm pretty sure this is what people use it for, is fine detail. So here I am painting an eye, and I'm using a rigger brush. It's quite finely detailed, and I'm able to draw tiny, tiny little circles. I'm going to paint those around those negative painting to leave the highlights in the eye. So absolutely perfect if you like painting very small, intricate things in this way. And here I am now painting some more fine detail. I'm painting the nose. And you can see that the lines, this is wet paint coming onto dry paper. You can see that the lines are very exact, very fine. There's no soaking in, making the lines indistinct, which is a benefit when you want to put fine detail lines on, but it's tricky when you want to get texture. So what I ended up doing was painting on some of the lines, you just saw me there, and then just dabbing them with my finger, which helped a little bit of finger painting. So this is my standard technique. I tend to put down one colour, and then while it's damp or wet, drop in the shade colour. And like I said before, normally it would blend together nicely, but it just didn't happen, and I had to push the damp brush into it to feather off the edges. Okay, I did get a nice result on the worn hat, which I forgot to record. So here we are on the scarf. I put down the basic mid-tone colour, this red colour, which is Peroline Crimson by Michael Harding, by the way. Beautiful red colour. And I'm lifting up my highlights while it's still damp, it's still drying. I've cleaned off my brush, and I've dried it off, and I'm scraping the damp brush onto the wet paint and lifting it a little bit out to give myself a basic highlight. Now back to struggling with the shading area. This will probably be burnt umber plus the red. to give myself a dark tone, and I'm trying to get some soft shadows in the shadow areas, and again I'm struggling a little bit. But I did decide to just leave it sitting on the surface, let it soak in as best it could, see what happened. And yeah, you just gotta be patient, and it looks really dark when you put it on, much darker than it would on cold press. I think one of the things that I found in the end was that the hot press is a really vivid paper. The colours, because the paint doesn't sink in, it sits on the surface, and so you don't really lose any of the pigments as you would normally. It doesn't soak down into the paper, so it's just sat there on the surface, and it's very vivid. As you can see, when it's dried, it gives you a very bright and intense colour. So texturing is a question of applying thin layers and then moving them around as best you can with a damp brush. I also found that pushing them around with my finger or with some tissue paper did the trick. And one thing I also learned was that I don't normally do this, but I found a few layers really helped. So normally I will paint a section of a painting and I'll get it in one or two layers. That's just the way I've learned to paint. I think with the hot press, you have to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to have to go over a few layers. So you saw me then just skimming over the light area of the scarf with some of the mid-tone. It was almost a dry brush. Can't really do a dry brush because it's so smooth, but if you're careful, you can skim across and get a little bit of texture on there. And dotting. I'm just dotting wet paint on, pressing it in with my finger. Normally this would all happen automatically in a way on cold press, but with hot press it was more of an effort. So precision, brilliant. Texture, nah, not for me. In the end, I found it quite a struggle. I spent quite a lot of time on this little thing, and I kind of enjoyed it. It was definitely an experience. It was definitely something that I learned from, but I will stick with cold press going forward. Never say never. I'll probably come back to this paper again next year to do another one of these things. This was a Christmas card. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, not my favourite paper. Quite hard to use. Anyway, I hope you got a little bit of information from all that. Thanks for watching, and here's another video that you might find of interest.